This episode is brought to you by the members of the You Run Podcast Network. All of their shows and our own can be found at yourunpodcast.com, along with links to our socials and to our shop. So please head over to yourunpodcast.com today and find your next podcast experience. We are the home of entertainment.
This ought to slow the pricks down. You want to die tonight?
The dad jokes he tells sets the scene. I hang on every word lost in the screen. The passion for fear is contagious enough. You make me believe in Mark's overblown roundups. You run podcasts or a movie review, unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning long after I fled.
Hello and welcome to the You Run Podcast, horror movie review. I forgot what I was going to say. My name is Scott.
My name is Mark.
We are the interactive horror movie review show that you control from social media. Each week you pick the movies on Instagram and you get involved in interactive features on all the other apps like TikTok and Threads and Blue Sky and all the other places we are. We are at You Run Podcast everywhere. So it's really easy. If you're on a social media, type in at You Run Podcast. We will be there. Also, if you only follow us on one social media, you are missing out on different content. So what we post on Blue Sky is different to what we post on X. What we post on TikTok is different to what we post on Instagram. So there is different content everywhere. So if you're on more than one, follow us everywhere.
I feel like such a fucking dinosaur, man. I have no idea what half those social media sites are you just said. Like, what the fuck is Blue Sky?
Blue Sky is like Twitter without the racist bigotry.
Right. I think I may have asked you that question before, dude. I just don't. Why? Just to have one. Just pick one.
I have picked one. I picked all of them. All of them. I like them all. We also have a website, yourunpodcast.com. There you can find links to all of our socials, and you can also find links to all of the other shows in the network, all of our other shows, and to our shop. And don't forget, if you are on Instagram, follow Mark, because his moustache is magnificent, and it needs to be. You need to post more photos of your moustache, man.
I might set up a dedicated page just to the moustache at this rate.
I think you should. And like I've had a fresh trim on the beard today, so I'm also looking very stylish.
Yeah, it does look very, very lined in there. I like that. It's very nice.
I had it done. I had it done in a place. I didn't do this. I actually had someone do it for me. I was pampered today.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so follow Mark on Instagram at VHS from the Crypt or at Reviews from the Crypt. If you've never listened before, this show is a spoiler-heavy show. We give you a brief synopsis of the movie. We then dive into our thoughts and spoilers. We normally have interactive features and games and voicemails and all kinds of other cool stuff as well. So stick around after the review because there's a lot more to it. If you tuned in last week, you would have heard me and Mark bicker an hour, argue for over an hour of what began our 90s slasher as we pitched Halloween 4 versus Halloween Resurrection. If you haven't listened to that episode, make sure you go back and listen to that episode because it was a super fun, super heated adventure. And I'm giving no spoilers away.
I don't want to talk about it, man. Let's just put that shit to bed now. It's done. I'm done.
Okay.
Stay where it is.
One last thing before we get going. Make sure you leave us a review. You can do that on Apple. You can also do that on Spotify. And if you're following us on YouTube, or if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you click follow and the notification bell as well. Those are the best things you can do to help us grow. The 90s were a magical time of innovation in horror. We took everything that was existing ideas from the 80s and twisted it and made it new and brought in new killers and done all this really, really cool stuff. Today, however, you just voted for a straight up cash grab 90s sequel. So we're not talking about any of that. 8 years after Andy Barclay was adopted and his adopted sister, 8 years after, 8 years after Andy Barclay and his adopted sister dispatch the possessed doll of the soul with the soul of the vicious serial killer Charles Lee Ray in a toy factory. Everyone's favorite corporation good guy is back. They're going back into business. They're going to make new range of good guy dolls and push them back out into the market. Such a shame that Chucky's blood was left on the floor and finds its way into the production line because now he has a brand new body. Andy, now in his teens, has been sent to military school. And because we haven't seen him suffer enough, we're now going to see him suffer as he's bullied by a complete dick. And we also get to watch the uncomfortableness as he tries to pull his first girlfriend. Also, turns out Chucky holds a grudge. And instead of getting the closest available victim to Abu Dhabi Dembella himself into, he decides to go all the way to military school to get Andy. When he gets there, he realizes new body, new rules apply. So he goes after a young kid called Tyler instead. To be honest, Tyler needs help because Tyler owns one of the coolest games consoles ever. We'll talk about that later. And he opts to play with a fucking doll instead. Now it's a race for time for Andy and his new lady friend to stop Chucky before he transfers his soul into the young Tyler. Murder, mayhem, some of the most diabolical dialogue ever put to screen in the 90s. Slasher Months continues with the wonder that is Child's Play 3.
Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end. Hi, I'm Chucky, and I'm your friend to the end.
So, you don't usually go into that much level of detail with the opening synopsis. What's going
honestly,
on
it's so I don't have to talk as much about it. This movie's garbage.
Come on, man. Like, to be honest with you, I'm kind of with you and I'm kind of not. Like, I've spent sort of like the last 10, 15 years like really hating on Child's Play 3 and being like, yeah, it's the weakest in the franchise. It's really not. This is actually a really good movie, and I want to publicly apologize to Don Mancini for the hate that I have given this movie for so long, because I don't know whether my tastes have just adapted or what, but I actually really, really enjoyed watching Child's Play 3 this time around.
Now, to completely counter that, for the last 20 years, I've been an avid defender of Child's Play 3, saying it's not that bad. And I want to tell Don Mancini, this is the most rushed piece of shit you've ever put out.
I don't know, man. I don't know. One thing I really like about the Child's Play franchise overall is the consistency. Especially being a Halloween fan, it's nice to have something that has a straight lineage all the way through. So I always appreciate how narratively consistent these movies are. And I think part 3 does a really good job of continuing on, but also giving that time in between. You know, instead of coming straight back in with Andy Barclay as a kid again, we sort of pick up 10 years after. I like how
I wanted to ask you about this.
Yeah, go on.
I wanted to ask you about the time gap. So that it's 8-year gap between Child's Play 2 and Child's Play 3.
Oh, is it 8? Is it? Sorry.
Yeah. This toy company decide after 8 years that they're going to put this toy back on the market.
Yeah, but I like how they deal with that, though. Like, I like the conference meeting where they're like, this is not good. He doesn't have a good reputation. If he goes back out again and it starts malfunctioning and we start having more reports, it's going to sink the business. We've built everything back up over the last 8 years. Maybe it's time to move on and concentrate on something else. And the head of the office is just like, nah, fuck it. We're going back into production.
Yeah, but see, I find that unbelievable, because if they have built the business back up, there is not a CEO in the world who'd go, do you know what? That defective toy that nearly bankrupted us, let's stick them back out again. It'll be all right. I just don't.
The business angle of it, like they were saying, like it was our most profitable product that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And like if we can get it back out there again, it could repeat itself. Enough time has passed now for this to sort of be washed under the carpet and start again.
Yeah, and I get that. And like you see them clean up the factory. Surely the police would have cleared away the exploded head doll that the two kids adamantly told them multiple times was a killer doll that they melted to the floor and then made its head explode. Surely they'd have investigated that and cleared it away. It wouldn't have been able to bleed into the vat of
Well,
molten
you'd think
plastic.
so, wouldn't you? But at the same time, like as a police officer, someone's telling you that this doll's come to life. Are you really going to bag it for evidence?
I think there's an obligation to bag it for evidence, even if you think it's bullshit. I'm sure that there's a thing that if someone says something, done something, you need to at least log it.
I don't know. I mean, well, next week we will discuss that in more length because they do. Um, this week, for this week's purposes only, I'm going to disagree and I'm going to say I don't think they would have collected this up and taken it away. But speaking of this, I do love this opening. I think it's really, really
Yeah.
cool. I can't work out whether I prefer this over Child's Play 2 because that's a similar sort of introduction, like cold
I,
open with the production line and stuff. But I do
I
like
I
this one a
like
little bit
Child's
better.
Play 2. See, I think I like Child's Play 2 better. Child's Play 2 is where they do the injection of the eyes into his head.
Yes. Yeah, and
Yeah,
then
see,
it lightning bolts the guys in the room.
yeah. See, that's where Chucky goes full like Emperor Palpatine and kills everyone
Yes,
in the room with lightning. Yeah, that's awesome. And
that is cool.
this
But I do
one,
like this one though. I do like the melting into the vat, and then you've got like the James Bond sort of like circle of Chucky. It's cool, man. It's a cool opening, and then you see him going into production again. I do like this opening a lot, and I am always back and forth between the two. Which one's my favorite? I suppose it usually depends on my mood.
yeah, and I do like the fact they've painted the CEO how I imagine most CEOs are, a
Yes.
soulless, blood-sucking bastard who just thinks about money.
Yeah, but that's how Hollywood presents these people anyway in most movies. So like it didn't come as anything as a surprise to see him be such a dick.
No, it didn't. And also the nice little touch of we're going to give you the first doll off the production line. As soon as they hand it over, you're like, you're going to die in about 3 minutes. And you're going to be dead, and he is. Um,
See, the thing is as well, like what I didn't kind of get, I know they do this later on in the TV series, but when the body, the doll thing goes into that big vat, like his blood is diluted. So I'm like, oh shit. Well, especially the first time I watched this, I was like, oh shit, there's going to be like an army of Chucky dolls. Like it's going to be dispersed between the factory, and we're going to get like a 200 charge long of Charles Lee Ray killer
yeah,
dolls. And I think it was a
yeah.
massive missed opportunity with this movie.
Yeah, and blame the studio. We'll talk about it in facts, but that was the Don Mancini plan, which he later done in Cult of Chucky.
Yes, he does do later on. Yeah. Yeah. So there you
Um,
go. There you go.
uh, I find Chucky in this is the most goofy looking Chucky. Like he looks different in this, and he doesn't. So in Child's Play 1 and 2, he is very toy-like, and in this they've added more animation to his face, and he
You
just
see, I
looks a
like
bit
it. I think it's better. I think this is the best he has looked in the franchise so far. I don't think it is the best he
really.
will look. Yeah, I do. I do. I think they've sort of nailed it more down on this one, especially with like the movements with him walking off scene and you see him run past on camera and stuff. I think they've really nailed the sort of animatronic side of it. You get a lot of close-ups. I do think he's a lot more expressionistic,
Yeah,
whatever the word is. Like when he's talking, his because he switches, doesn't he, from the good guy to actual Charles Lee Ray Chucky. And I do find his face a little bit more like screwed and more panned in this,
yeah.
like pan face, than it is in the previous one. Um, but I don't know, man. I think it looks good. I think it's the best it has been in terms of actual animatronics. I do think that.
Yeah, I agree with you, but it doesn't sit well with me. I watched Charles Play 2 before I watched this, and I sort of went, "Oh, oh."
But
Like,
Child's Play
it
2
was
is a pinnacle of the franchise. Like that is the best of the best. And I think the fact that the problem is like I think Chucky looks the best in this and acts the best in this one, but I think everything else around him isn't as solid as it is in Child's Play 2. So I think a
no.
lot of forgiving is given towards the animatronics in the second one. I don't think for a second that they're bad at all. But I think if they were the same level as what they are in Child's Play 3, I think Child's Play 2 would be a hell of a lot better than it is, which is a difficult thing to say because I think that's a perfect movie.
How are you feeling about the recasting of Andy? Obviously, they didn't have a choice. This come out the year after, but good pick, bad pick?
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. I saw all these movies growing up and I thought it was the same actor. I thought the look, the acting, the mannerisms of the two, I think he nails it perfectly. And I think in terms of his look, it is probably one of the most believable recastings I've seen in Hollywood in terms of showing that significant growth in age. Like if you put the two of them side by side, they even were ballsy enough to put a picture of the original actor of the real Andy Barclay at the beginning of the movie and then shoot straight across to the new Andy Barclay. And I was like, yeah, man, I buy the fact that this is the same kid, just 8 years older. I think he's really
Yeah.
impressive. I don't think I think he could have been written better in this movie. I think they should have certainly gone more John Connor T2 sort of attitude with him as a young teen adolescent.
As opposed to very compliant, just slightly petulant
Yeah,
child.
petulant child, like the stuff he's been through as well. The fact that he's being shipped off to a military camp, like he doesn't look like he belongs in a military camp, you know, like he looks like he would be loved and adored by any foster parent.
Yeah, and not only that, he's killed a killer doll twice. He
Yeah,
survived the unthinkable. He is gonna have the biggest fucking attitude. Like,
of
if you
course.
have that as a traumatic event as a small child, you then bounce around the foster system and no one really clicks with you. When you get to military school, the guys gonna be like, "You're gonna toe the line." And you're gonna be saying, "No, I'm fucking not. Fuck you. Fuck you. Fuck
Yeah,
the foster system. Fuck you all. Do you know I killed a killer doll twice?" That's how you're gonna be.
your attitude towards a man would be unbelievable. Like you've lost your mother, she's banged up in a psych ward because nobody believes her, even though you know it happened. You've been through it twice,
Yeah.
seen multiple people that you love and care for die around you at the hands of this fucking doll. Like, and nobody believes you. You know, like you either get to a point in your life where you have to convince yourself that it was all in your mind, or you accept the fact that you were right. And if you do genuinely believe you're right, which he does in this movie, then your attitude towards authority would be dreadful, you know? So, like, the way that he's handled in this movie, I think he is poorly written. But
Yeah.
again, I think the actor is great and I think the casting is fantastic. I just think that he should have been written with more thought in mind for the events he's had to deal with in the two prior movies.
Yeah, so he arrives at the military camp. He gets a quick conversation with the commander or whatever you want to call him, and the commander basically says, "Here, you play ball, you do as you're told, and we won't have a problem." And Andy kind
Yeah.
of just blatantly complies. We get to meet Tyler, who all the kids there are in military school. It's a mix of boys and girls, ranging from 6 up until 18, I'm assuming. But the young kid, Tyler, is the only person there who seems to have a toy. And he's got, I think it's a Neo Geo. I don't think it's a Game Gear. It's a handheld gaming console. It's
It's
awesome.
definitely one of the first because I didn't this movie come out before even the Game Boy?
19. No, this was 90 something. Game Boy was 88, I believe.
Right. Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's an authentic console. It doesn't look it. It
It, it,
might
it,
not.
it,
It might be.
it is. I think I put it in facts. I may not have done, but I know they rebranded it and they showed a couple of shots of the game, and then in editing had to cut it out because they got threatened to be sued.
Oh, right. Okay. So yeah, it definitely is real then.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I don't know,
definitely the
man. I
real
mean, for
deal.
me, like, I when I was growing up, it was Game Boy. Then it was Game Boy Color. Then it was Game Boy Advanced. You know, like I know they had like these Neo Geo things, and like they had the Sega one, the Sega
I
handheld thing.
I
I'd
had
never saw them.
I
Really,
was a
man, I'd
Sega boy.
never saw them
I had a
growing up.
Game Gear. I had a Game Gear.
Game
It was
Gear,
like
that's the
it was
one. Yeah.
massive. Yeah, yeah. I had that with Sonic the Hedgehog. It was awesome. The
Dude, man,
battery
I have
lasted
never
about
seen
half
one
an
of
hour.
those in my life. Never in my life have I seen one of those consoles. I legitimately thought it was just something that came out in like America because none of my friends had one. The only handheld consoles people had growing up that I knew were Game Boy. And then you just upgraded your Game Boy to the latest one, similar to what happened when like PlayStation came into gear. When there was like other consoles running alongside it, like GameCubes and things like that. I was like, nobody had a GameCube, man. Nobody had a
Oh,
GameCube. The only time I saw someone have a variation in console was when Xbox came on the scene, and then it was either your PlayStation or your Xbox, and that was the only
yeah,
divide I ever knew with consoles growing up.
my console choice throughout life has always been I've always picked the wrong one. So I
Yeah,
was the guy who had so I had the Game Gear, which no one else had. I then
no,
had the Mega CD, which was the bolt on for the Mega Drive 2, which lasted about eight
that was
minutes.
weird. That was a
Yeah, I
weird thing.
I had the Sega Saturn, the one that plugged in the top of the Mega Drive or the 32-bit adapter.
That
I
was
then
shit.
had a GameCube, which no one had,
Also,
and
they had good
yeah,
games, but the problem with that is they were so far and few in between that you couldn't trade off games with your mates once you completed them, and you couldn't afford to buy games to then up your collection. So it was like you bought 1 or 2 games, and that was your console lifespan.
yeah, and it wasn't until I got past that I went, "Do you know what? I just give up," and I picked Xbox, and then I switched to PlayStation, and I've just switched back to Xbox now.
I see. I'm not really a modern type of gamer. I think I still own all my retro consoles. The only variation I actually have from I had Super Nintendo, Sega Mega Drive, obviously PlayStation 1, 2, 3, and I had a Dreamcast in between. And that's it. That's basically my lifespan on consoles.
Dreamcast, one of the best consoles ever made.
Amazing. Sonic Adventures is one of the best games ever made. And I still play that to
Yeah,
this day.
there's a skateboard one, but you're on a hoverboard as well, and I can't think what it's called, and that's fucking
Oh,
awesome
Trick
too.
Styles.
That's it.
Trick Styles. I have it. I don't know if I had it to hand to be able to show you. So I don't know where my Dreamcast collection is. I'll find it. I'll find it during intermission and I will show you it because I have it down here
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's awesome. Anyway, we've gone way off topic.
Yes,
Let's
sorry.
go back to
Sorry, Killer Doll.
let's go back. Yeah, Killer Doll, military camp, arsehole cadet. Now, I d- I watched this through a different. So when I watched this when I was younger, I was like, he's a bad person and he's horrible to everybody. When I look back on this, he's just your standard military guy who's in a position of power, giving orders in the way that everyone else in the military gives orders. He's not necessarily an
I
arsehole.
didn't
He's
hate
just a
him.
good soldier.
I
Yeah.
didn't hate him. I didn't hate him. I didn't hate his morals. I thought, considering the way that Andy was behaving, he could have been a lot more harsher on him and a lot more drastic on him. I thought he did a good job of setting boundaries and levels. And I don't know whether this has all changed because I'm a parent now, that I'm
Yeah.
actually on his side. But I didn't dislike him one bit compared to what I used to do growing up watching this movie.
Let's talk about the girl, and I can't remember her name, the love
No.
interest for Andy.
Yeah.
She's about 40 years old. She's so much older than everybody else in this movie.
Nah, dude. Nah, I mean, she's definitely. I would have said she was on similar age length as not Tyler, the arsehole guy. I would have said she was more of his age. Like Andy's about 13, 14. No, he can't have been because of the time jump. I don't know actually. How old was he in the original Child's Play? I think he was only like 4 or 5, was he not?
I think he was 6, so he'd be, what's that? He'd be older now.
So
He'd be
he'd only be
14. Yeah, 14, 15 maybe.
14. She
Yeah.
looks like she's like 16, 17.
She does not
She's
look like
definitely
she's
too
16.
old to be kissing him.
She's definitely too old to be there. She's one step away from being the paedophile hairdresser that we'll get to in a minute.
Brilliant guy. I like him.
He's honestly, he's hilarious. But when you have a real close look and you look at his walls and stuff, you're like, oh man, you've got some real weird kinks and you need to get some help.
Oh no, I didn't pay much attention to that.
Oh, so let's talk about Cadet Girl first. I like
Yeah.
her attitude. Like she is so by the book. Like he's picking on Annie and she goes, fucking arsehole. And he goes over, what did you say? She went, I said fucking arsehole, sir. And he's like, you think you're funny, don't you? She's like, yes, I do, sir. And he's like, right, I want 20 push-ups now. And she pisses through the 20 push-ups, gets to 18. He's like, one-handed.
One-handed. Yeah.
And she still does it. And then she stands up and got this big smug smile because she's played within the rules and still made him look a dick. And I'm like, I like you. You're very old, but I think you're great.
But again, in that situation, like I don't think he handles it in a bad way either. He's been shown up, but like he doesn't like lash out. He's not a dick. He just sort of takes it on the chin and he's like, everyone here is treated equally. Rah rah rah. He's just basically shown authority and discipline.
Yeah.
You know, like he's not. I don't know. Even like later on, when like Andy's in serious shit and he makes everyone run laps until silly o'clock, like
till their feet
I don't
bleed.
disagree with his methods on that either. You know, like he's setting an example of him and he's making everyone else around him suffer. It's the kind of shit they do in like prison, isn't it? You know, like to make everyone be like, look, you fucking got us all in the shit now. It's like the kind of thing they do at football training. If someone's missed training, they make everyone run laps or whatever to set an example and be like, look, you've pissed off all your teammates now. They're here because you fucked up. You're part of a team. You play as a team. You act as a team. And I think it's a good way of dealing with it, you know. So again, I'm not an advocate for him. He's still a bit of a bell end, but I don't think he's as bad as I remember him being, is my point.
No, he's definitely not. The hairdresser, I don't know who or why or how this character was written. So when Andy arrives, like, you need a haircut. And he's like, do you know why they cut the hair of soldiers? It's so no one grabs your hair. And he literally grabs his hair and yanks his head back and then runs his scissors across his throat. He's like, and slit your throat. And I'm like, oh, it's a bit dark, but I'm on board. And then when it pans out, on his wall, he has got photographs of every child that he has cut the hair of with a lock of hair attached to the photograph. And as soon as I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. And every time you go into
That's
that
weird.
little bub, honestly, I'm like, oh, it's like a serial killer, but for hair. You're
Yeah.
keeping.
I mean, his obsession with hair is fucking wild. That scene in the dinner hall where he's walking around and he's like, you, Tuesday, you, Monday, you. When was the last time you came to see me? Fantastic. And I think the actor who plays him is fucking brilliant. And I was today's years old when I realized that it's Uncle Frank's brother from Hellraiser. It's Thingy's dad. The one who gets
Oh, is it
skinned and it's
really?
like skin suit. Yeah, it's because he's got his mustache, man. It's amazing what a mustache can do to a face. It's the same actor, and I was today's years old when I learned that.
See, the mustache is what got me, because when I'm looking at it, like now, whenever I see anyone with your mustache, because it's yours now, whenever I see that, I instantly identify that character with you. And like I could see you doing that. Like you're a very obsessive person, and you have an addictive personality. If you cut
Oh,
someone's
dude,
hair
yeah.
once and loved it that much, you would be the guy who'd be collecting photographs and locks of hair and going, I remember when I cut that one. It was a rainy day outside. It means a lot to me, that one. It's a special hair, that is. It's a very special color.
Oh mate, honestly, I am that obsessive with things. Like I've had to literally buy extra storage, like cloud storage, for the photos I take from the stuff that I do at work. Like I like to do everything. Like, and I do a job a day, and I've been doing it for like 30, well, not 30 years, like 16, 17 years now. And I have 17 years worth of photos of every single thing I have made or done or built or created. It's fucking wild, man. I like it. I like to know what I've done so I can look back like, oh, I did that job and I remember that. And yeah, I mean, this fucking room itself, mate, full of VHS speaks for itself in terms of my obsessive nature. But saying that,
This
I
is
did nearly shave the mustache today.
Behave yourself.
really
Mm. I came
why?
very close. And surprisingly enough, it was my wife who was like, no, I don't. I like it. So I was like, okay. Because it was started as a gimmick. That's the thing. It started as like a gimmick. Do you know? It started as like a jokey thing. And I feel like I've reached its full potential now. But it's almost like I'm being taken over. Do you know? I feel like I'm no longer me anymore. I'm just a mustache.
Welcome to the beard. Do you remember when I was clean shaven all the time, and now this if I take this off,
It's strange,
neck,
mate.
it
It
is
freaks
weird.
me out, dude. I remember the last
Yeah.
time you did it and you sent me a photo and I actually messaged you like, what the fuck, dude? Like, why have
Yeah.
you done that?
I look
can't
about
look at you.
12. It's really
Yeah.
bizarre, really off-putting. So yeah. Advice to any young listeners we have, and we do have some young listeners according to our demographic and our stats. If you grow facial hair, be prepared that it will then become a part of your personality and you need to maintain it. It's like owning a pet. You can't just leave it to do its own thing. It needs like treatment and trimming, and you need to look
Dude, I'm
after
going
it
to
and
go to
take care
bed
of
tonight having dreams of like my mustache being like that episode of Body Bags, the hair, where it's all got fucking Medusa's heads on the end of it and they're all talking to each other. Control him.
So going back, Chucky killed the CEO and then posts himself to Andy.
Yes.
This setup is really cool. So Tyler goes and collects the box, and he's asked, the general guy says to Tyler, "Oh look, can you take this this box to the new guy?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course I can." And everyone's horrible to Tyler because the place is full of assholes, and they bump him and bang him, and he ends up dropping it down the stairs. And he sees that it's a good guy doll, and he's already seen an advert in the hairdressers earlier
That was
four
cool.
good guy dolls. Yeah, and Andy had like some weird Vietnam flashback. And then he takes it and he opens the doll up and it's like, "Hi, I'm Chucky. I'm your friend to the end. Heidi ho, ha 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 ha." And then he's like, and then it comes to life. And
This was
this
so
is
cool as well, man.
yeah. See, I love this because Chucky's like, I need to get to Andy. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, the new kid, is he your friend?" He's like, "Yeah, he's my friend to the end." And then this is where you literally see Chucky like verbalize the fact of, "Oh, hang on a minute, I'm in a new body. Fuck Andy. Hi, little kid. What's your name? I'm going to be your friend forever." It's so cool.
I like when he bursts out the box as well, and he's like, "Hey, Andy, long time no see." And he's like, "Hey, who the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
The best of it is his. I'll come back to that later on. The thing is, what I don't get about this is, so at the end of Child's Play 1, he burns in the fire.
Yes.
They make him a new body in Child's Play 2. But the law
Yep.
still sticks that he has to go to the first person he revealed himself to, which is Andy.
Yeah.
So why has that changed here? Because it's a new
Because
body again, but it was a new body in part 2. Unless he was just like, "Oh, fuck it, I'm going back for Andy" in the second one. But I just assumed the law would have stuck, and because Andy was the first person. And next week we have Bride, and that also changes things again. Well, it doesn't. It doesn't. We'll talk about that next week.
Well, yeah, a hot take. Don Mancini can't write a through line for shit, and he adapts the plot to suit whatever he wants to do. So if he wants Chucky to go after someone else, Chucky can now do that because he'll write a line of dialogue that allows it. The law in the Child's Play franchise in 1 and 2 is perfect. From 3 onwards, it is the most bastardized, pulled apart, demolished law. And by the time you get to the series, there is not a single trace of the original law left.
No. I mean, the thing is, like, it's not like a big thing. Do you know what I mean? It's not something that's like, no, he can't do that. That, like, it's we're talking about voodoo here. Do you know what I mean? Like, the believability of the concept itself is mind-boggling. So the fact that if all it takes is him to be like, "Oh well, it's new plastic body. This new body means it's a reset. He's the first kid that's seen me since the reset, so that means the rules now apply to him."
Yeah.
But then why didn't that apply in part 2? You know, and if that was the case in part 2, his new body, the first person he revealed himself to, would have been the CEO of that company, which he strangled in the back of the car.
Exactly that. And in this movie, the CEO he killed in his
new body would be the first person he saw in this. Do you know? And it just although the law works, it also doesn't. You know, and that's like,
it doesn't work because
it's a good job of not diving into it too much. Do you know what I mean? Like, he doesn't specify specifically enough. And I think that's one of the things that he made a mistake of in the first one. He didn't in the first one because it was self-contained. So it was like, this is it, you know. But then when you're making sequels, if you are going to continue on with the same narrative, you kind of need to continue on with the formula, which is something that they kind of deviate from marginally. But in terms of the law, when you start thinking about it, it doesn't make a lot of sense in that aspect.
No, it really doesn't. And it really annoys me that when you piss around with the law of any movie, and they do it in Friday the 13th, they do it in Halloween, they do it in A Nightmare on Elm Street, they do it in all of them. They get to a point and they go, "Oh, we need to change. Oh, but all that stuff we said before, oh, we can write a line of dialogue to make all that go away." And it really bugs me. I just want continuity of the law, because that's what makes it work for me. Like when they done The Shining and Doctor Sleep, that's one thing they were very consistent of, keeping the law of the abilities right, and it worked for me. But when you take a law like this, that it must be the first person you saw, which is Andy, and then you get to the third movie and go, yeah, it can be the first person who you reveal yourself to.
No, I think it was. I think it was the first person you reveal yourself to in the first one anyway. But again, even the first one, he did reveal himself to Andy, but the second one, he revealed himself to multiple people before he reached Andy, and the same again in this movie.
Yeah, exactly that. There begins this kind of cat and mouse game happening on the base where Andy's aware that Chucky is there, and Chucky is sort of trying to get Tyler, and Andy's trying to stop it. And you've also got there's a really cool scene in this. I love it, where the general throws the doll out. It gets rid of Chucky, throws him in the bin, and he kills the bin lorry driver, which is brutal. He done nothing. Like, just climb out of the truck, you'll be fine, Chucky.
I think his attempt to get out the back of that truck were piss poor as well, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if that had started, I'd have been out of that truck before I got crushed and mutilated. But the death of the general, where he basically finds Chucky in his office, like, oh, for fuck's sake, and he throws him in the bin, and then Chucky's out of the bin, and then Chucky sort of pops up, like, ah, and the guy died of a heart attack, and it's Chucky's response is like, oh, right, yeah, I'll just put my knife away then. It just stands there and watches him die.
I do like, so it goes full blown in the next movie, but I do like how more comedic he is in this movie. I think this does do a perfect balance of utilizing Brad Dourif, like in terms of like his one-liners and things like that. I don't think they go too far with it. I don't think it's not enough like it is in some of the previous movies. I think this is sort of, for me, I do think Child's Play 3 is the perfect Chucky, which is, again, what I said earlier. I think put this Chucky in Child's Play 2 and that movie is faultless. One of my favorite lines is when he goes to Andy's room. He's like, hey, Andy, I'm going to be a brother. Because he's all about going into Tyler, who is black. And I was like, that is fucking brilliant. Like, such a funny line.
Funny, really inappropriate, but this is something I'm going to say with Chucky. Chucky says lots of inappropriate things and has done throughout the franchise, but it works in the context of who he actually is. The fact that he is a horrible, nasty bastard serial killer just in the body of a doll. And if it was Charles Lee Ray saying it, our response would be, oh, but because it's a doll saying it, you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect balance. I think this is the iconic line as well, where you get "Don't fuck with the Chuck."
Oh, fuck with the Chuck.
There you go. Yeah. Perfect. I love that line. I say it all the time, and yeah, it's a shame that it wasn't said in part 2.
There is that. War Games is amazing. So after the generals died, they're going to carry on and they're going to have their annual paintball extravaganza, where they've got rifles loaded with paintball bullets, and Chucky goes in and swaps all the bullets out for live ammo. And I was like, oh, that's dark, but I quite like it. And they go off, and you've got the blue team and the red team, and Chucky just causes absolute fucking carnage. So Chucky goes up there and he manages to kidnap the girl, and he takes the girl to the car. There's just an abandoned car on a hill somewhere. And then he's like, he calls the blue team and is like, if you want the girl, bring the boy and we'll do a trade. And they're like, okay. And then he calls the red team. He's like, if you want to kill all the blue team and win, they're going to be at the car. It's like, you're such a little prick.
But that's the thing. I think they do a good job of utilizing his abilities in this movie. You know, like, they don't take it too far. They know he is a doll, and it's not. It's his intuition and his intelligence what makes him a superb serial killer in comparison to people like your Myers, your Freddys, your Jasons, your Leatherfaces. And I think it's not. He is, like, obviously constrained by his height and the fact that he's a plastic doll, but because he's such an intelligent psychopath, he uses everything around him to his advantage. And I think this movie showcases that really, really well, especially with the war game scene where he changes the bullets, but he only changes the bullets on the red team and not the blue team. Can we talk about the true hero of this movie? I can't remember his name for the life of me, but you know who I'm talking about. The guy who jumps on the grenade. What a guy.
I felt sorry for. So this is the nerdy guy, and he's picked on and he's bullied all the way through. Like, when Andy first gets there, he finds him tied up in his wardrobe, and he's like, "What happened?" He's like, "Oh, they pick on me so bad." And he's really nice, and he's just the nicest kid ever. Shouldn't be at military camp. He's not cut out for it. And then this bit where everyone's like, some of the blue team have been shot, and Chucky's got a grenade, and then Chucky throws it, and this
And no one's
down
aware of it apart from him.
yeah, and he just dives on the grenade. I'm like, oh man.
Takes one for the team, man. Takes one for the team. The practical effects in his kill as well are fantastic. Like, it looks really, really cool. They always do that weird thing in horror movies, don't they? Where, like, if someone dies wearing glasses, like, the glasses are all
break.
cracked.
Yeah.
And they, like, over exaggerate on this one. I'm like, the dude's just dumped on a grenade. He wouldn't have cracked glasses. He would have, like, no head or no glasses whatsoever.
Yeah, he would just be a red stain on the floor now, not a full ass body with a couple of cracks on his glass and a little bit of spatter up his cheek.
Yeah. So, but again, I thought his sacrifice was incredible. It always tears me up because you want him to do well, you know, and I think like he's a vital part of the story. Because when he discovers Chucky as well in the once he's killed the hairdresser guy, you see him like battling with his emotions, whether it's real or whether it's not. And Andy's
The hairdresser kill. The hairdresser kill is fabulous because the hairdresser's like he finds Chucky in the cupboard. He lifts over. He's like, he looks at him and he like looks around. If everyone's looking, he goes, "Is that a military cut? I don't think it is." And like sticks him in the chair to cut his hair. I'm like, what are you doing?
I would have liked to have seen him have the haircut, but we do get that haircut later on in, I think it's Cult. And it looks fucking weird, man. It looks weird with Chucky with a buzz cut.
Yeah, the thing is, I think it would have been quite funny to do it in this movie and Chucky kill him because of the bad haircut. But Chucky preempts it and he's like, no one's fucking with my ginger hair. Leave my ginger hair alone.
I don't get why he's so obsessed with his looks, considering he's a doll.
He's an ugly doll as well. Why is there a random theme park? Why is there a random carnival right next to the military base? I don't understand. Makes no sense.
Well, no, they're not at the military base, are they? They've gone off into the woods for war games. They go on the hike, which is like the hike. You can see that they set off in the morning and it's not till night that they reach the camp. So they've been hiking for like 8 hours to get there. So they're quite a distance away from camp in the edge of the forest. And I think the carnival, I think they're on the outskirts of the nearest town. My perception, I don't know, I could be fucking way off on that, but that's just the way I perceived it when watching.
Yeah, see, I just perceived it as Don Mancini. Wouldn't it be cool to have Chucky run around a theme park? How do we make that work? That's what I get from this.
I bought into it. I didn't sit there thinking, why is there a theme park here? I thought logically it made sense for it to be there. But fucking hell, man, the set design on this place is incredible. This final battle scene is so cool, man. So cool.
Yeah, I love the final fight. I love the fact that Chucky catches up to Tyler because Tyler's run down there and he kills the security guard that Tyler's gone to. And he takes Tyler at gunpoint. So he's making Tyler carry him and he's holding a gun while he's being carried. And he's like,
and again, they didn't need to do that, but they were showcasing the fact that he is a doll and cannot walk at the same pace and hold somebody hostage.
And he spots the ghost train. He's like, oh, that's the perfect place for me to Abu Demobella my body into yours.
What other ride would you go
on? Probably out of the packed amusement park and into the woods that are right by it, as opposed to
this is very true.
into the middle of the ride, and not just into the middle of the ride, like in the ride through. And he finds like a mountain, and he's like,
no. They go to like the cloudy bit, don't they? Where there's like that little coffin thing. And Tyler quickly chucks him in the coffin and runs off, and then the chase ensues, and that's when they which is really cool. They're like grabbing on the rides and they're getting higher and higher on the rides, and he's jumping on like side attraction bits and getting floated up higher and higher before they end up at the ultimate Mount Doom, which is really cool set design. And they climb to the top, and this is where we get the full Ade Due Dembella, give me the power. This fucking Mega Man.
Hold on. See, you've listened to me struggle with that line all episode, and now you're just like, oh yeah, I know it verbatim.
Yeah, of course I know it. I love the Child's Play franchise, but I was hoping you would have got it on your own, you know? I would have given you a round of applause at some point if you'd have done it off.
Thought something like this might happen.
Fuck you.
But I tell you what, I do love that it does change every movie. It's like the scene in Evil Dead 2. Do you know where he's like got to remember the words? It's like Don Mancini does forget it every time, and he's like, I know it starts with Ale Due Dembella. What can we add in next? Because I can't remember what we did in the last movie. Instead of going back and watching it, I'll just make the next bit up. The first three lines are right, but then after that, it is different every movie.
Yeah, and also he's like, I know at some point he shouts, "Give me the power, I beg of you." So that's got to go in there. But the rest of it, just make it up around it. I find Chucky's death in this really anticlimactic.
I don't know. Well, let's compare it to the previous ones. I mean, in the first one, he just gets kicked into the fire and then shot against a wall. So there's nothing really mega about that one. The second one is fucking awesome. He gets full Terminator 2 Judgment Day shit where he's coming up on the creature thing, you know, like Arnie does. And then he grenade
brilliant.
the T-1000. It's great. It's Child's Play 2 is fucking mega. I wish we hadn't done that on the show already because I would just do that every week. But yeah, I know what you mean. It gets to like that point where Andy's climbing up the volcano and he's scouring up. And again, the R.A. Due Dembella thing, it goes on for a very long time. I'm like, dude, like you should have done this already now. Andy's like fallen back down to the bottom at least 4 times. You've had a good 10 minutes and it's still going on. And by the time Andy finally gets to the top, it's I don't know. I think like they came up with this idea, like we'll set it at the top of the mountain, but then once they got to the top of this volcano, it's like, well, what can we actually do apart from shoot him a couple of times and kick him off? And then do you know that fan? Do you remember that fan that we like panned in on like a couple of scenes ago? Maybe we should just kick him off into that.
Yeah, which is exactly what they do. And it's like literally they show you him go through it, and that looks really cool. And then they pan away and they go back to Andy, who's now woken Tyler up, who wakes up instantaneously. He's been knocked the fuck out, clean out. And Andy's like, Tyler. And this kid goes, yeah. And like sits bolt upright like the Undertaker. I'm like, wow, that's some bad acting. Like, not like he doesn't come to and he's not groggy. He just sits up like, yeah, brother, what's up? I'm all right. And then it pans back to the fan. There is no evidence that Chucky was ever there. There's no bits of him. It's just the fan spinning. I was just a bit like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's not like, I mean, I think it's very difficult to follow on from Child's Play 2. Like that ending in that where he just melts into that blob of plastic and his head explodes. It's just fucking spectacular. Like I don't think the franchise has and ever will top the greatness of Child's Play 2. To this day, I still think it's one of the best sequels in horror, and I stand by that statement till I die, I think. But I don't think this movie does a bad job of trying. You know, I think there's stuff in here which could have been done better, but I think they had a tough mountain to climb in order to compete with Child's Play 2. And what they did achieve, especially like you said,
climbing an actual mountain. That's what they've done.
Well, maybe he did it on purpose as a metaphor. It's like, look, what we did last time was shit up. I don't think we can do any better, so let's just roll with it.
Yeah, well, we're going to take a break. Stick around because we've got facts and a game and loads of other cool shit coming. So, yeah, let's have a break.
I think shit like this is funny because there is that vibe, though. Like, there are people on the internet that, like, unironically are like, you want to solve the homeless problem? Just kill them all. Like, they genuinely, like, consider that a solution.
Welcome to Reddit.
Under the Floorboards podcast, hosted by John and Eric, is a horror movie review podcast leaning in hard on comedy delivery. Their show is super fun and super easy to get into. You will binge this show.
Lennon's role in the Beatles was central to the band's identity and success.
But let's not forget that McCartney is just a relentless workhorse.
Between the Facts is brought to you by Phil and Dan of Mondo Street Social Club and dives into the world of true crime, conspiracies and controversial cases. If it is true crime or true crime adjacent, you can guarantee it's going to appear here. These and many other shows are members of the You Run Podcast Network, available at yourunpodcast.com, your home of entertainment. So, yeah, head over to yourunpodcast.com. Check out the home of entertainment. Well, we've got everything from true crime to... Well, we've got everything. yourunpodcast.com. So go and check that out. Now it's time for Mark's recommended. He's panicking. Mark's recommended account. I stopped the music early to put you under pressure.
No, I know you did, man. You could have left that running for at least a couple more seconds. Hold on. Hold on. There we go. Yeah, yeah. There we
Okay.
go. I've got it.
Mark's recommended account of the week.
They stumbled upon recommended account of the week this week is Horror Cards Etsy. Horror Cards Etsy is, I think, a good account for people who especially are into horror. They create cards, seasonal cards, birthday cards, Christmas cards, Easter cards, you name it. They make those cards, but they're all horror themed. There's some really, really cool stuff on there. Obviously, we're coming to the sort of January month at the moment. Well, February month at the moment. So we've just gone through our Christmas period, but it was the Christmas seasonal stuff that I noticed this account on, and that's why I started following them. They did some really cool Christmas themed stuff like Krampus. There was even a Child's Play one actually underneath the Christmas tree, which was really, really cool. But I think everybody would probably appreciate this account, especially if you spend a lot of money on Moonpig and things like that. Why not buy someone you love a horror themed Christmas card, or buy someone you love a horror themed Christmas birthday card. So go and follow those at Horror Cards Etsy. Just spell out how it is. And you can find them on Instagram. I'm sure they're on other social medias, but as you all know, I'm a dinosaur, and Instagram is the only place I go to.
And that was Mark's recommended account of the week. That's what you get. Let's do some facts. So Don Mancini was under pressure from Universal Studios. As soon as Child's Play 2 was finished, they were like, where's Child's Play 3? And he went, I haven't written it yet. And they've gone, well, you need to write it because we want to release it next year. Also, we want a time jump, so you need to recast it as well. And Don Mancini went into overdrive. He's openly said that this is his least favorite of the entire franchise because he felt that he was rushed and he felt that he had kind of run out of ideas. He had a really cool idea and the studio wouldn't let him do it because they didn't have enough money to give him. So Don Mancini initially wanted this to be Chucky's blood goes into the machine. All of the dolls that come out are Chucky or a part of Chucky. And they all went to military camp. And that shootout scene was actually going to be the military going against the Chucky, who were all going to be holding rifles.
Awesome.
So cool. Why did we not get that? Now, he did get to do this later. He'd done it in Cult of Chucky. We had the Cult of Chuckies, and I thought it was cool. I liked that. I think it would have worked really well here. And like first watch, you're like, oh, there's going to be loads of them. And then there's just one. It opened up too many questions like, well, why was there only one? What about the other dolls? And it irritated me. So it's the only film in the series where Andy Barclay is played by someone else instead of Alex Vincent. They had to do this again because it came out the year after. And the Alex was what? He would have been 9. So he couldn't play a teenager.
Like I said, I think they did an excellent job of the recasting side of things. I do think this is a believable. It wasn't until my later life and the powers of the internet that I discovered that it was played by a different actor. Growing up watching these films in succession, I genuinely believed it was just another guy, like he'd just grown up in between the two takes.
Yeah. He's really convincing. He does a really, really good job. And I think he captured the essence of the Andy Barclay character and made him older. It kind of worked. He's just a bit of a wet blanket, I think is the right phrase.
And again, that's the power of the writing, not necessarily the actor.
Yeah, this is the last film to contain the law where Chucky must transfer his soul into the first person he's revealed to be able to live. They stuck with this through 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to talk about it at length next week. I'm sure you've all guessed we're doing Bride of Chucky next week, but yeah, we'll talk about that next week because what they do in Bride of Chucky is fucking criminal to this law.
You say that though, man, but I watched that movie today. I was getting ahead of the curve. Like I found it very difficult to watch this one and then not watch the second one. Well, the fourth one, if you will. I don't think it's bad as you remember.
Well, we'll see. Did you know Chucky loses his right hand in Child's Play 2, and Child's Play 3?
No, that's interesting. Oh yeah, because he gets it shot off in the first,
and his mum shoots it off.
Knife. He gets a knife one where he sticks his voodoo knife in it in the second.
Yeah, to cut his own arm off because he's trapped. Yeah,
because he's trapped. Yeah, and then he gets it shot off at the end of this one. It's the first thing, yeah, because Andy's trying to shoot him and is a terrible shot and shoots his hand off.
Yeah. So, you know, when Tyler's watching the advert for the Good Guy dolls,
Yes.
and he gets up and it's all done in slow motion, and he goes, "Wow." That is a mirror scene slowed down from the original Child's Play, because that's exactly what Andy Barclay does the first time he sees the Good Guy dolls.
Oh, do you know what's weird about that first movie? I know we're massively going off topic tonight, but like Andy's like wearing Good Guy doll stuff in the beginning at the kitchen when he's making his mum breakfast. He has a full Good Guy suit on, and he's got all like the Good Guy plates and pans and like all the toys and everything in his house. And then he sees this advert like he's never seen a Good Guy doll in his life. You know? I'm like, you've got the memorabilia, you've got all the stuff to go with it. You would think that you would be aware of the doll. Surely the doll would come first, and then the stuff around it, the merchandise, would come after.
Yeah, and not only that, like if you hadn't bought all those little bits of shitty merchandise that you've got scattered around your house, you'd already have the doll. Like your mum wouldn't be like messing around with some
back dealer.
Yeah, exactly. Wouldn't be dealing with some skaghead in a street trying to buy you a second-hand doll. You'd already have one.
Yeah.
The budget for this was $13 million. Healthy budget.
Do you know what the budget was for the second one, out of curiosity? I want to know if this is more or less. You would assume, given the success of the second one, that this would be more.
Well, I can't tell you that because that will ruin next week's game. But I had $13 million for this one. How much do you reckon this made worldwide in its theatrical run?
I think this did really well. It's the problem you have with the Child's Play franchise is they're late to the game. Like, by the time this came out, we're already on Halloween 6. I think we're on the Freddy's on number 5 or number 6 himself.
Yeah.
We've got like 7 Jason movies. Leatherface is at least 3 or 4 deep himself. So it's like, I think he was a little bit late to the game, but I don't think the hype was over enough for it to bomb. So I'm going to be like maybe 50 million box office success.
No, this was an absolute disaster. Made 20 worldwide.
Wow. That's disappointing. I can't understand that. It makes a little bit more sense for the rebrand on the next movie, which I hate.
It also blows my mind that he got another one. Like, if they spent 13 million, you're going to imagine they spent another 2, maybe 2.5 in marketing. So that's probably 15.5. They only made $5 million to then give him another.
When did this movie come out?
This was 90.
It's got to be early, hasn't it? 91?
Yeah, 91, 92.
And then what did we get? Bride was 99?
Yeah.
Like the last of the 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
8 years. 8 years is a long time for a slasher sequel.
Very true. But you can't say that when we got a Halloween sequel fucking 50 years after the first one.
Yeah, but we had like 17 others in between.
This is very true. We've got no voicemails and we've got no comments from Spotify this week, and that's because this week and next week me and Mark are doing that wonderful time travel thing where we're recording shit in advance. So Mark doesn't know what day of the week it is, doesn't know what's next, doesn't know what come before. It's fine.
It's weird when we do stuff like this because I'm forever like, can I say that, or has that happened in terms of continuity? And then like I get really overpowered by my want to be consistent to the audience, and I'm like, no, you can't say that because they don't know if that's happened or not yet. And then I just spend in like a real weird dizzy period. So if ever I phase out, it's usually because I'm thinking where I am on my actual timeline.
Cover notes this week. So this is where we ask you to replace the cover note for the movie. This week it was Look Who's Stalking, which is a take on Look Who's Talking. And our social media done so much better. And all of social media waded in, starting with Facebook, which Facebook never say anything. We have a Facebook. This comes from Dewey Podmonster, member of the Eurun Podcast Network. And he's just gone simply with this little fucker again. Yes, but for a third time. Over on X or Twitter, Video Tasties went with Daily Mail approved. Now, I need context to this because that meant nothing to me.
Oh, I can explain this to you.
Oh,
This
please.
was like bonfire material. So this came out in. I don't know the full logistics. Gareth will probably be able to explain it a lot better than I can. But this was banned. This was a banned movie in the UK. Actually, this was banned in the UK for a long while, due to the hype around. There was this
It was
weird thing in the
it
early
was the
'90s where there was blaming.
James Bulger murder.
Yeah, and then there was blaming like horror movies for influencing people's decisions and serial killers. It's like blame the movies. The same thing that happened when Eminem came about and he was rapping about killing bitches, and everyone was like, "Oh, this dude, man, he's sending us all to hell." They did a similar thing with Child Play 3, and it was banned like in the UK, and it was having like bonfire burnings of all the copies
Yeah.
of it on VHS and stuff. Which is why it was one of the hardest fucking tapes for me to find for my collection. Like, dude, I had like every Child's Play movie. There was only 4 of them released in the UK, which was 1, 2, 3, and then Bride. I had the full set apart from 3, dude, and it took me fucking years to find it, man. Absolutely years, because it's so scarce. Because most of them were either burned or just non-existent, or collectors who were already pre-established themselves before I got in the game had the copies that were already limitedly available to people. So it was a fucker for me to get hold of.
Oh, good. I'm glad you put some context. That's Video
Excellent.
Tasty's excellent YouTube channel. If you like anything VHS or like watching along old VHS, Gareth is, he's got you covered for forever and almost lives, almost nightly now.
Yeah.
Movies for Days, also on X, went simply
Don't
with
fuck with the Chuck.
Beautiful.
that's the cover note, that's the tagline it should have had, and that's Newman from Movies for Days. Awesome account. Over on Blue Sky. This is the alternative to X with Air as well. The Krusty Boys, they gave us 3 for one for each of their members of their podcast. The only thing more unbelievable than a killer doll is a white person that knows voodoo. They also went with this doll is not inflatable.
Excellent.
And finally, scarier than wearing overalls when you have to shit really bad. And that's from the host of the You Gonna Eat That Crust podcast. Instagram. I think this might be my favorite. I very rarely pick favorites, but Beer Body Slams went with Child's Play 3, Alex Vincent not included.
Perfect. I love that.
I thought it was fabulous. And they're a beer, wrestling, and horror account. So if you like those 3 things, go and give them a follow. Where Evil Resides went with He's Small but Effective. And that's Josh, also excellent YouTuber and filmmaker. And finally, One Enthusiastic Horror Fan Official went with This Time It's War. And again, really cool. Huge thank you to everyone who gets involved in cover notes and all the other things we do. Make sure you follow us on social media at You Run Podcast to get involved on one of the upcoming episodes. So I've got a game, and it's a new game. We've not played this game before, which is fucking rare. I had a moment where I went, we need something new, and something in my head just clicked and went, I've got it. So this game is called So It's the 90s. The 90s were packed with fun horror movies, and I'm going to give you 4 horror movies, and you need to tell me which one of those movies did not come out in the 1990s.
Dude, do you know what? This is really fucking hard, right? Do you know, because I always like praise myself as being like, yeah, I love 90s slashers. And then when we did this month, and I had to select movies to go into the polls for everyone to choose from, I was blindsided by the fact that actually, no, I'm a 2000 slasher guy because most of the movies I loved came out in the early 2000s. I was surprised at how limited the slashers actually were in the early 90s and late 90s. I thought it was 90s peak, but it's not. The influences started to come in the 90s, but it wasn't until the early 2000s where they really took off, and that's when we got the plethora of fucking B-movie shite that I adore to this day.
Yeah, exactly that. So you've got 4 of these categories to do. We'll do the first one now. So which one of these movies didn't come out in the 90s? Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Scream, Scream 2, or Scream 3?
So Scream did 96, I believe.
Yeah, it's
I think
correct.
Scream 2 was, I want to say a year, but I think it was maybe two. So I think Scream was 90, Scream 2 was 98,
I'm
possibly.
not going to. I'm not going to tell you any
No,
more
no,
of
no.
them.
I'm just talking out loud. Don't worry. I don't need validation. I think I then think New Nightmare was certainly before Scream because that was like the prototype for Scream. So I think
Let,
Nightmare
let's
must have been New
let's
Nightmare
give you
must have
some.
been
Let's give you some
95.
background. Let's give you some background music while we do this.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah,
So I
you're
think New
welcome.
Nightmare must have been before Scream, which I know it was. And I think Scream was 96, which means Scream 2 was obviously after Scream 1. It can't have come Scream 3, then Scream 2. So it's got to be Scream 3 by process of elimination.
That is correct. Well done. You got the first one right. On to the next one. Leprechaun, Candyman, Halloween Resurrection, or I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Halloween Resurrection. That's early 2000s.
It is. It was 2002. You're better at this game than I hoped.
Well, not only because you thrown in Halloween Resurrections, and I'm a Halloween fan, so I know the dates of those movies.
Body Bags, Jack Frost, Child's Play 2, or Do You Want to Know a Secret?
Do You Want to Know a Secret, which is early 2000s yet again.
It is 2001. This next one, this is the last one, and this is by far the hardest one because even I went and fact checked it because I thought the internet was wrong. Maniac Cop, Slumber Party Massacre 3, Sorority House Massacre 3, and Cheerleader Massacre.
Fuck, man. They're like all movies I don't know. I know Maniac Cop early. It's got to be 90s. We did the Slumber Party Massacre series, or at least we did one or two of them between our podcast and when Heather was running her Wednesday Wine Horror Show.
Yeah.
And I think even though we were surprised at the aesthetics of those movies looking 80s, they were actually really late 90s. What was the Cheerleader one? Cheerleader Massacre.
Cheerleader Massacre.
I think it's got to be Slumber Party Massacre 3. Purely, I think it's Slumber Party Massacre 3. As a guess,
Unfortunately, that is incorrect. Slumber Party Massacre 3 come out in 1990. Sorority House Massacre 2 also come out in 1990. And Cheerleader Massacre come out in 2003.
That was a difficult one. That's only because I do not know those movies well enough to pass judgment.
I'm going to take round up first on this and then let Mark end it on a high. Meh. Can I say meh? Can that just be my review? It's fine. Like, you can tell they kind of run out of ideas they could do with their budget. I don't know. Don Mancini shouldn't have buckled and should have dug his heels in, and we should have had multiple Chuckies because that would have been cool. And this, in comparison to that, kind of sucked. I'm just not excited by this film. There's nothing in this film that makes you go, "Oh, wow, that's so cool! I want to watch it again." It's. No. I tell you what it's like. You know when you go to a shop and you buy like their own brand tomato ketchup. Like it's got all the same ingredients. Everything you need is there, but it's not like the brand name ketchup. It's like that's how this movie feels. It's like it's got everything, but given a choice, I'm gonna pick a different one.
It's like basically like making Nando's at home. Yeah, it tastes like Nando's, but it's not the same as going to Nando's.
Yeah, it's not like I kind of don't have a lot to say beyond that. Like it's average. It's 2.5 out of 5. Like it is, yeah.
I get that, and that was the mindset I lived in with Child's Play 3 for a long, long time. It was only upon this latest rewatch and watching all of them in succession for the lead up for these next two episodes that I actually found an appreciation for this movie. I thought Brad Dourif is at his best. I think the casting of Andy Barclay is really, really good. I think everybody else in terms of the casting is fantastic. I don't think anybody is such a weak link between them. There's some elements that introduce some humor, which I felt was perfectly balanced in all honesty. I don't think it quite goes as far as what the next couple of movies are going to take it to. And I think this was it was a nice, comfortable zone for this franchise where it didn't take itself too seriously, but it also didn't jump the shark. Some of the kills in it were slightly underwhelming. I think a little bit more focus could have been put towards some extravagant kill scenes, and especially with Chucky's demise at the end, that felt underwhelming. As we've discussed, I think that could have been handled a little bit better. But I think there is a lot of elements within this movie that do qualify for a decent enough or a competent enough sequel to what is one of the greatest sequels of horror, in my opinion. I think Child's Play 2 is the pinnacle of what can be achieved when you take the original and then amplify that in a way that is much grander and much better, and expand upon the story and the lore. I think this movie misses the mark quite a lot, but I think in terms of continuity, I think the first 3 Child's Play movies are fucking solid overall, man. I think when you watch them all back to back, 1, 2, and 3, they're a really, really enjoyable 3-piece. I think the set location, not the set design, the set location doesn't necessarily work for this character. I think Chucky works best in an isolated environment.
And I think too sprawling.
Yeah, and I think given the involvement of such a wide array of characters kind of diminishes his character quite a lot. And I think that's one of the movie's biggest failings, is because there is so much going on and there is so much introduction to so many other cast and so many other characters, that he kind of falls to the wayside in his own movie, which is a shame, really. I think, as I said, it's hard not to keep reverting back to Child's Play 2, but I think that handled the dynamic of isolated environment, minimalistic characters, Chucky being the antagonist, it really gives his character a chance to shine. But I think with the introduction of so many people in this film, he doesn't get the opportunity to do what he does best. And considering this is my favorite iteration of Chucky, I just think he's in the wrong movie for this level of greatness that he is in this film. But overall, I don't hate this movie, and I'm quite glad I've had the opportunity to rewatch this film, because more often than not, when I do go back and watch the Child's Play films, I tend to find myself going 1, 2, and then straight into Bride. Which is a bit of a mistake on my part, because I think this is vital, especially in terms of continuity going into Bride. I think this is a very pivotal movie in terms of what you need to know in terms of information for continuity. But again, it's one of those, like, I'll watch Child's Play 1 and it'll get my undivided attention. I'll watch Child's Play 2 and that will get my undivided attention. But I'll put Child's Play 3 on while I'm cooking, or it's on the background in the telly. I'll enjoy it for what it is, but it won't hold me and it won't grab me. I'll tune in and out of it as and when I need to, and the parts that I know are coming up. I think this is a 3.5 out of 5. That kind of feels like I'm being a bit hard on it. I feel like it probably does deserve a little bit more, but I'm still kind of bitter about my experiences with it in the past. So I think it was a 2 before I watched it for the latest rewatch. So it's gone up 1.5 stars on the latest rewatch, if that counts for anything. So yeah, 3.5, man.
Mine's dropped exactly the same amount the other way.
Right, give me another, what are you, 52? Give me another 12 years and maybe I'll change my thoughts on it as well.
Ouch. Well, on that extremely hurtful and like stomach churning punch and stab in the back, that wraps another episode. As we've kind of said already, next week we are covering Child's Play 4, better known as Bride of Chucky. But until then, presto, you're dead. See you later.
You want to die tonight?
Jokes and tell sets the scene. I hang on every word lost in the screen. The passion for fear is contagious enough. You make me believe in Mark's overblown roundups. You run podcasts or a movie Unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning long after I fled. But do I want that? You run podcasts, horror movie review, unveiling facts and playing games too. Your words paint pictures of darkness and dread, leaving me grinning